Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. 2, because I'm a fan of punk music. And 3, it's just more fun, right? If this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. Please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back and thank you. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Jeroen Korthout, who is the co-founder and CEO of Salesflare. Hey, Jeroen, how are you doing?
Hey, doing well. Yourself?
Good. I'm splendid, sir. I'm splendid.
Splendid, even. Wow.
It's my favorite word. So for Jeroen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also your work that you do, just as a way of introduction to introducing yourself to the audience?
Yeah. Nobody can see me. I'm a handsome. I'm Jeroen Korthout. I'm co-founder and CEO of Salesflare. Let's say I'm 35 years old and I'm based in Antwerp in Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
And with Salesflare, we serve companies all over the world, small and medium-sized businesses who are sort of have the issue of not being able to manage their sales properly with their previous CRM, or maybe they have an Excel file or something,
Mm-hmm.
Or they had one. And we make sure that they can follow up their customers better.
Okay. So, I mean, you mentioned the kind of like Salesflare, and it's like, I think I was doing some research, and it's described as like an intelligent CRM platform. Now, we were talking before about the sort of the genesis of this all, but I mean, can you tell me about how Salesflare came about, and also this idea of like kind of like the intelligent CRM thing, and kind of like this, what makes you stand out from the crowd? Because I want to get into kind of like what some of the nutty problems that we kind of talked about.
Yeah. So it's generally very hard to explain it. Sometimes I say it's a CRM that fills out itself, but then people are like, huh, how? And then
it's magic.
So like intelligent CRM is something that people can sort of relate to.
Okay.
But about the genesis of Salesflare. So previous to Salesflare, I used to work in a marketing consultancy, and they use Salesforce internally. It was my very first CRM, so I sort of took it very seriously, and I wanted to use it the right way. People told me that it would help me organize my sales, so I really tried to use it for that and put everything in there that I needed to, including even tasks and all this kind of things. But I didn't really manage to make that work for me, and I noticed that actually for all my sales colleagues, it didn't do that job either. We kept organizing ourselves in Outlook,
right?
And our CEO, he really loved it, like for doing reporting, but we really didn't get much further than delivering the reporting data, let's say, like entering our sales opportunities in there, and sometimes adding someone on the newsletter.
Right.
It didn't really help us sell, so it didn't really like make sense for us to use it for more than management reporting. And even at some point, there was a colleague who told me, Jeroen, if you put sales opportunities in there too early, then they're going to expect stuff. Maybe you shouldn't do that.
Right.
So I started doing it a bit later. This kind of real stupid salesperson stuff. But I was young, so. But then I didn't do anything with that insight for a few years until I was working with my co-founder on another software company.
Mm-hmm.
We were in business intelligence, and we went to a conference. We had quite some good leads to follow up. I think 120 or something after the
Mm-hmm.
conference. And I knew that Salesforce wasn't really going to help us with that. It's not really something that you take to follow up leads. It's
Mm-hmm.
great for a big company that wants to build a software system, basically, but it's not a practical thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a good look around. We tested some different CRMs, but they always failed on us, or rather, we failed on the CRM. So
Right.
we didn't manage to fill these systems out like we were expected to fill them out.
Right.
We didn't have that discipline to be these sort of perfect data input robots
Right.
that the software expected us to be. And we figured that that's actually why salespeople hate CRMs. It's because they need to do a whole lot of work.
Right.
They're asked, and sometimes people take away their bonuses if they don't fill out the system.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really get much in return because the systems don't really help them. Yet then the companies can use it for management reporting and stuff, but
Right.
that's not something the salespeople can really identify with, apart from of course getting a commission.
Right.
And then we thought also that actually that issue is only because the data that salespeople are putting in, they sort of, you send an email and then you go in the system like, I sent an email.
Right.
Or you book a meeting and then you go in the system like, I had a meeting. Or you have a call and you go in the system like, I have a call. Or you see someone's phone number in his email signature and then you start copying it into the system. Or you meet a new person and you need to have that reflex of adding that person.
Right.
These are all things that actually, if you connect the different data sources, if you think about it very technically,
Mm-hmm.
in the right way, that can be automated. So we saw this sort of fully automated CRM in front of us that would just get the data from all the places where it existed,
Mm-hmm.
and offer it to you in such a way that it would actually help you follow up your sales.
Right.
That was in 2014, about 6.5 years ago, when we had that initial idea. It also included things like email and web tracking and all that, in a system that no matter in which order you would say this is a customer of mine, or a phone number would appear or whatever,
Right.
it would all connect to each other.
Uh-huh.
And initially we saw that as a system for larger companies. Like, we saw all these companies dealing with Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics, and they were all unhappy because their salespeople weren't using it.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to these bigger companies and we said, like, here's a system. Your salespeople don't like Salesforce. They all said, yes, that's correct. We said, well, you use Salesflare. It's a specific sales platform. It synchronizes with Salesforce. And then your salespeople have something they want to work with. The data is generated. It flows back to Salesforce. And from there, you can organize everything. The issue was that these bigger companies didn't really, they wanted to fix Salesforce. They didn't want to buy another system, first of all.
Right.
And they certainly didn't want to synchronize two systems. And then we saw actually that the companies around us in the startup incubator had a similar issue too, but for them, even usability, end user experience, practical use was much more important. So we actually switched our focus to small and medium-sized businesses.
Right.
And we're selling to them ever since. So we're helping small and medium-sized businesses really perfectly following up with their customers without spending any time on robotic tasks and all that.
And do you find that that's kind of like, you mentioned this idea that kind of salespeople don't like kind of completing the admin tasks that come with kind of like many of the major kind of like CRM systems. And is that, I've heard that before. I mean, is that a pervasive thing across, I feel like, the sales industry? Anybody that's in sort of sales?
I haven't heard any salesperson yet who told me they like it. There are some who said that they're pretty good at it, but those are really only a small subset.
Uh-huh.
Very often, these are the good salespeople.
Right.
At least it usually goes like this. So somebody starts selling. In the beginning, it's not going very well. They're filling out the system very well. Because if they don't fill out the system, then I mean, what are they doing well? So they're very focused on that. At some point, the sales start rolling in, and they start losing the discipline of filling out the system, because then the discussion starts shifting, and it becomes this sort of discussion like, dear sales manager, what would you rather have me do, fill out the system or sell?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's actually the great salespeople that keep sort of a system going, and with some CRMs that is sort of possible. But it's the great salespeople that can organize themselves to give every customer sort of the attention they need at scale.
Yeah.
Like making friends at scale, let's say. But for
And
that, you cannot rely on your own memory, so you need some system.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I like the idea that you're trying to make something, you're trying to automate as much of this intelligence gathering based on the activity that the salespeople are doing. But I can also see that actually when you automate that and you almost create a system that works with somebody or like a salesperson and sort of like limits the administrative sort of side of things, but still gathers the information and can prompt for follow up and build relationships and so on and so forth. But I can also see the benefit for people further downstream, like maybe kind of that somebody's in, if you're doing a handover to somebody who's in account management, once you've done a deal with somebody, or somebody's working in support and so on and so forth, that actually getting the front end fulfillment or the accumulation of information right is going to help colleagues further downstream as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it downstream or in adjacent departments. There's all kinds of issues that can arise if a CRM is not used properly, which is in most cases. For instance, the marketing department sends out some kind of promotion to people that they shouldn't send a promotion to, because they're in the pipeline and the stage where it doesn't make sense to send them the promotion, for instance.
Sure.
But the marketing department can't know because the salespeople didn't tell them about it. It's not in the system, basically. Somebody becomes sick and you have no idea what they're doing, so it's very hard to fill in. Or they leave the company and you need to start from scratch because you don't know any of the conversations that they were having. If you already know with whom they were having conversations, that's already great.
Yeah.
But it might be that you don't even know that even.
Yeah. No, I like the idea that it's like it's a software system that's designed to play to somebody's strengths rather than kind of tie them down and force them to almost like follow a process because that's the process, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
But actually, you're in this, this all kind of sounds kind of good, and I understand, see how they kind of like the gathering of information and kind of like, and so we're more able to understand it, build on it, and also kind of pass it on and things is really good, and how it better works with salespeople and to initiate those relationships with customers. But this could also seem like slightly kind of esoteric. So could you give me a couple of examples of, say, organizations that are using your platform, and help us just understand, like, how has it changed the way that they work and how they're kind of benefiting, just to bring it to life in terms of how this stuff kind of happens in reality, because otherwise it just feels, oh, it's a thing. Let's tell some stories and bring people to bring it to life.
There's, for instance, a company that sells sort of banking services to SMBs. and they were organizing themselves in Excel files.
Right.
And as they were scaling their organization in the beginning, these Excel files was sort of okay. But as they were scaling, it just didn't work anymore. You cannot properly input everything in an Excel file. It's very hard. You can like have the company name and then the contact and what you last done or whatever, but you cannot go much deeper than that. And what they saw was that more and more they were losing deals, just slipping away.
Right.
And they didn't know why, because
Right.
they couldn't drill any deeper. So when I did a customer interview with that customer last year, they used the words accountability and transparency when they described what Salesforce brought to them.
Right.
In general, on an end user level, most of them talk about following up leads. That's really the basic issue, not from the management perspective, but from the end user perspective, is being able to follow up a lot of leads. And a lot is, let's say, more than 20, 30 or so.
Right.
In a way that really flows well systematically and all that. And one of our customers that I interviewed last year, for instance, they said to me that just by implementing Salesforce, by starting to use it, so implementing is a heavy word, they now make 1 million more that they would normally have lost, that would slip through the cracks.
Okay.
And these people actually in March, when COVID sort of started coming, they contacted us and they said, we would like to start saving costs because we see this whole crisis coming. Can we cancel our account? And then I contacted them and I was like, they have 3 users, so that's 105 euros a month in our software. I was like, so you want to save 105 a month to then start losing that 1 million a year again, or is this? And then they stayed on the software. They're like, oh, sure.
That's fair enough. I mean, so also you're in the. So I mean, I think that's kind of good. I mean, and I like the idea of a CRM system that fits with and plays to the strengths of kind of like salespeople in terms of, particularly in that sort of B2B space, and helping them develop relationships and capturing the information that they can do. So like you said, it improves accountability and transparency, but it also improves kind of follow-up and things. But you're also in that kind of the thick of that whole space, right? Service and experience space. You're in that sort of, you're focusing on the small and medium-sized kind of, business sort of space. And so I'd like to kind of get your perspective, or just get your take on some of the things that have been kind of going on around us. I mean, there's all sorts of words that have been used to describe the last kind of few months. Extraordinary, unprecedented, amongst many others. Because I've been watching what's been going on, and I've kind of seen a whole bunch of different things emerge from this, and I've written about this, what I've called different imperatives. This idea that that learning is one, and resilience is another, protection is another, and then this multifaceted sort of experience kind of thing, whether it's customer, employee, stakeholder, and also this leader experience. I mean, what are some of the big things that you've been seeing? What's kind of emerged out of this? Some of the biggest things that have emerged out of the pandemic from you, and does it align with kind of some of the stuff that I'm spotting as well?
Yeah, definitely. I sort of read the article, and I agree with most of the points that are in there. Let's start maybe for us as a business. We have been selling remotely for about 5 years now.
Right.
Because we sell to customers all over the world. That's something we were used to, and we didn't have to adapt, so that was easy for us.
Right.
But then our internal organization needed to change as well, because we're all working from home since March. We haven't gone back to the office. Here in Belgium, there's this sort of pendulum motion that some companies go back to the office a little bit, and then the government again says no, you shouldn't, and then
Yeah.
but we have never participated in that. We're remote since March. And that meant that especially a lot of our communication internally had to change. That was in the initial phases, because we had been working all from the same office, thinking from the perspective that if we're all in the same office, all in the same room actually, then our communication is going to be better because we're close to each other. Everybody will be aware of everything, and we're sort of relying on that accidental type of communication that you get at water coolers and whatnot. But then when we shifted remotely, we had to change a lot of these things. Our internal communication had to become much more systematic, and we also noticed that actually what we had been doing up till then was quite dysfunctional.
Right.
And now we needed to change it because of this shock and everybody working from home and I don't know what. But it would have been better if we would have done it way back.
And when you say dysfunctional, what do you mean by that? And what was the thing that you had to change?
People not knowing what was going on in other discussions.
Right. Okay.
Is the main issue, and this is both people that were not involved in discussions. It's people that were involved in discussions, but we didn't properly record it.
Right.
So we built this whole system in which everything that we discuss in meetings ends up in a Google Doc. Every decision that we make, and then for other people that are not in a meeting, we make sort of a summarized version of the things they should know.
Right.
We call that announcements, and that goes in our internal communication system, which is called Slack. And we have all these kind of meetings, many of which we already had, but we had to change this a bit as well. We have like stand-up meetings where everybody shares what they've done the last day and what they're doing that day. It's just 10 minutes in the morning.
Sure.
We have operational meetings for the growth team and the development team every week or 2 weeks, in which we define what to do. Then we have a sort of team meeting where we go every 2 weeks through things that are going well and some things that are not going so well, and we fix things and we learn about things. And we give demos to each other also of the things we've been creating. There's a demos moment at the end, which is also quite fun. And then we have strategic meetings in which we think more about sort of what are the things we're going to do on a slightly longer term, which then translate into these operational meetings that I mentioned. But I have a blog post about that. If you type SalesFlare remote team or something, you can find it.
Okay, perfect. I mean, I think that's the thing is that different companies have responded in different kind of ways.
Yeah.
And it's one of the biggest things I think that and it's no coincidence that it's listed out first, but on those imperatives out that the biggest thing for me was learning, and it's just like, and because of the challenges is that people can sometimes get stuck in process and then end up not learning the lessons in many ways. But I think the learning is the thing that kind of applies to everything. Learning about yourself, learning about your business, learning about your customers, learning about how we operate, how we do things. And that's sort of like stretched kind of like many of us because it's forced us to change very, very rapidly. But also given that you're also in the midst of the whole, sales and experience and building customer relations kind of like space. I mean, from your perspective, what is the future sort of like of service and experience look like from you? What are some of the big sort of challenges that you believe lie ahead, and what do we need to get prepared for?
Yeah. I'll maybe start and extend the last question a bit into what I've seen companies do, and then
Okay, sure.
and yeah, because some companies might not have done this kind of things yet. So
Okay.
in general, a lot of our customers and other companies I've been talking to, the main thing they've been doing is sharpening their target markets, the
Okay.
definition of it,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that they, even more than before, systematically talk to the right people.
Right.
This is because, yeah, there's, the success rates have gone slightly down in many sectors. So
Mm-hmm.
it's important to focus on the best leads, to still make the targets. Also, the way in which you get in touch with people has sort of shifted.
Right.
So there also, it's important to focus on one segment where you can build a consistent way of connecting with these people.
Okay.
Then yeah, there's a whole lot going on about managing expectations in this crisis, of course, especially if you have shareholders.
Yes.
How do you organize all that communication? It's important to manage that in the right way, obviously. But looking into the future, I think what we've seen, obviously, all of us, and I don't think I even need to mention it, is that much more has gone online.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's a shift to e-commerce, or in sales, a shift to remote selling, or in many ways, things have become more digital, and it's the enterprises that were prepared for this that made the first nice jump,
Mm-hmm.
in a way. But in the long run, it's gonna be about how we can adapt to this sort of new way of working.
Mm.
And a few of the hard things are, one, recreating the sort of customer relationship that you used to have offline online.
Yes.
Especially for salespeople that are not used to this, it's rather hard task. Is for instance, how do you do Zoom calls in the best way?
Sure.
How do you make sure that you can still build a relationship when you're just in a video call with each other?
Mm-hmm.
This is something where people really need to learn how to be more personable, how to um, take the slightly more informal way of connecting with people, compared to the traditional sales meeting.
Yeah.
How to use their tone of voice more, and all these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's also partly about learning more about how you can, with everything becoming more digital, how you can organize yourself better in that respect.
Yeah.
And how you can also can keep track of customers when they are slightly more hidden from you.
Yes.
So like how do you know in between the sort of touch points you have with them, what's going on? um, and then more and more, like when customers are in let's say a digital relationship with you,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's much more loose in a way.
Yes.
And they expect much less of interaction. They much more only want you to be there when they really need you, sort of.
Yeah.
um, and getting used to that and building your customer experience around that is for many companies a challenge, because they basically need to rethink the whole customer experience to see how they can manage expectations correctly there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like it's a complete kind of like well, both paradigm and mindset sort of shift.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to almost like unlearn everything and then relearn some new stuff.
Yeah, but in a way it's good. It helps companies um, to innovate. I
Mm-hmm.
believe, like for instance, think about banks that build their mobile banking experiences. Like we had the whole banking experience, and then they made this online thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that was sort of okay. But then when banks could build it for mobile, then they could really make a shift.
Mm-hmm.
At that moment, they understood the whole thing better,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a new thing coming, and then they could make proper apps, and then the whole desktop experience started sort of lagging behind.
Mm-hmm.
In a similar way here, we get an opportunity to, with what we know now, to rethink things and do better.
Yeah. Perfect.
Um,
No, it's good. I mean, I think that's right. There is a challenge. It's like, and we've got to just kind of like, particularly for people like salespeople with that have always, many of them have done things in a certain kind of way that they have to rethink, reimagine the process then that in a way that works for both them and also their customers, and that's going to
mhm.
be hard. So,
Yeah.
if I was to say to you then, Jeroen, for someone listening to this, because I always like to boil it down to, I feel like, easy kind of like first steps, because sometimes we can talk and talk and it's like, oh, that's very interesting, but like, what should I do? People
Yeah.
kind of like, I hear people kind of say, and I say to people, like, for anyone listen to this or reading the highlights or whatever, and they want to improve their service or experience they deliver to their customers, I mean, what from your perspective would be your best advice?
Oof. Generalistic advice for everyone.
Yeah, do this, do this, do this, do this one thing, or do this two things, or kind of whatever.
um, Good question. I'm not a hero in generalistic advice, but
Okay, then pick something specific and we'll try to generalize from there.
yeah, okay. Um,
Well, let's say for like, I tell you what, let's target it. Let's target it at salespeople, because actually, particularly in that kind of the B2B sort of like space, salespeople are they are um they're a really important part of a customer's overall experience. They're generally sometimes the first people that customers or potential customers kind of meet. So if
mhm.
you were to give a piece of advice to people that are either managing a business or an enterprise or something, and they've got access to the salespeople, and they go, this is what I think you should do, and this is what, and it'll help you improve the overall experience, what would you say to them?
Yeah. I would
apart
say
from apart from buying sales flair, obviously, but then that would kind of
obviously,
like
but
put
everybody knows that
that to one
already.
side.
Yeah, yeah. I would say though, it's sort of related to it. Is really mapping out your new buying process. And I'm not saying sales process, because
Yeah.
your sales process should be your buying process as
Mm-hmm.
much as possible. Because if you're not selling in the way that people expect to buy, then anyway, um, to rethink that and think how many of the friction points can become more frictionless.
Yes.
um, to then map where everybody is in that process and build a system with which you can properly follow that up,
Yeah.
and maybe also define what the points are where you are most needed or helpful within the process.
Right.
Because I believe when things shift online and our relationship becomes a bit more remote and digital and all that, it's really really important to be helpful, even more than before,
Mm-hmm.
and to certainly make sure that you're there as a salesperson at these points, so you can score with your customers.
Right.
and then map out the in-between points and see what the rest of the stuff is that needs to happen, sort of where you need to guide people through,
Mm-hmm.
and then try to see how you can automate some of these parts, because the opportunity when things become digital is that software can help you. So if you, for instance, were in the past, if you wanted to book a meeting, you had to think about driving and all that into your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't have to do that anymore, and you could use a simpler meeting scheduler
Mm-hmm.
to have people book in your calendar integrated with Zoom, and with a few clicks, just people book. There's a Zoom link, and before a meeting starts, you just click. These kind of experiences become possible.
Yes.
Um, I think it all starts with mapping out your process, though,
Yeah. No,
remapping it.
yeah, remapping it, reimagining it in the kind of the in the current based on the current environment and what's likely to change
Yeah.
kind of going forward, and don't make any fixed assumptions and don't get stuck in the past, I guess.
Yeah, definitely, and then maybe combine that, if that makes sense, with what I said earlier about um, being more specific about your target market.
Yeah.
That also really helps with mapping the right process, because the more specific you are with the target market, the more specific your buying process is also going to be.
Sure.
Um,
Perfect. Julian, thanks for that. So I have one final thing on my card that I wanted to ask you about today, and it's related to the book that I published last year called Punk CX, and it was published, I've been doing a bunch of, if you like, social research on these kind of podcasts since then. Because I've been asking people a couple of questions. They're sort of like word association questions. So my first question is, what one word, or maybe two words, but one word if you like, do you think would describe a more punk approach to customer experience?
Probably say punk.
I love that. Because actually it's so obvious, but nobody said it, which is awesome. That's very cool. So I'm going to put it in there, punk, of course. And the second question is, what company or brand do you think epitomizes that a bit more of a punk approach to experience?
Um, I don't know whether everybody knows the app, but it's an app I personally use every day, and it's called Duolingo.
Mm-hmm.
It's a language learning app.
Right.
Now, imagine learning a language normally. It comes with going to classes, having this kind of course book, all kinds of exercises, learning grammar. It's a very complicated experience, right? There's a lot of things going on. Now, Duolingo has managed to make that extremely easy. So you just log into the thing. There's a bunch of things below each other, all like sort of courses in which you can level up.
Yeah.
When you click it, the only thing you need to do is sometimes type, click on some stuff, and then everything just works. And you just keep going through it. It guides you through it. It motivates you. It does all that with an extremely simple interface. I don't think they could have made it more simple without damaging language learning, basically.
Awesome. I will check that out, and I will make sure that I kind of get that into the the highlights and everything else. So we point people over to that to check that out. But Euron, I just wanted to say that's kind of all I have kind of today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I mean, I think you're trying to address a problem that doesn't get talked about very much outside of the sales kind of industry, but actually trying to build something which enables salespeople to gather that information and to actually do their job better, and how it kind of flows, the benefits from that flow, if you like, downstream and across different departments is a really important thing, but it doesn't get a lot of attention, if you know what I mean. So
No, definitely less than it should get. I mean,
yeah,
the fact that lots of people hate CRM is clear.
yes,
Looking for solutions, there's not a whole lot going on there for some
yeah,
reason.
and so that was it, which is which is kind of, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's crazy, but I salute you for what you're trying to do, because it's the more we help each other, and if we start on the right foot, then everything is going to flow from there. So I think it's important work, and just want to say thank you for coming and talking to us today and sharing your your experience and your insight. That's been super cool.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. My pleasure.
Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing kind of people. And it's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. One final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.